So thank you so much. So with that, we're going to move on to our final panel speaker for this panel. So now we'll actually welcome Deborah Weinstein, Executive Director of the Coalition of Human Needs since 2003. For decades, she's worked on a range of issues on the state and federal level, including policy strategies to lift children and their families out of poverty, providing jobs and wages, housing, nutrition, unemployment insurance, and equitable tax policies. She is also the executive director of the Massachusetts Human Services Coalition and has a master's of social work degree from San Diego State University. So Deborah, please take it away.
Thank you very much. Hello, progressives. Thank you, Gladys Vega, who is a true hero. She makes real and so concrete some of the things that I need to say. So I am Debbie Weinstein with the Coalition on Human Needs. We are an alliance of organizations representing human service providers, people of faith, laborers, civil rights, policy experts, and other advocates that understand that realizing the unfulfilled promise of our nation requires roots out of poverty for all of us, requires justice for communities of color and immigrants, and requires equity, stopping the headlong enrichment of the very few at the expense of everyone else. There is a lot we must do together. Right now, there is a chance that Congress will get to yes on a COVID relief package that Gladys talked about. It will not be all that's needed. President-elect Biden has called it a down payment. We kind of call it emergency first aid. The cost to millions of people if Congress does not enact relief before leaving this month is very high in lives and livelihood. By the end of this month, the moratorium on evictions is slated to expire. Several forms of unemployment benefits will expire. By the end of December, 16 million people will have lost assistance. Emergency paid leave will expire. You already know this. People are hurting. 83 million people, 1 in 3, said last month that they were having a hard time covering their usual expenses. That was true for half of the Black adults surveyed. Millions of people are behind in their rent, and that's more likely to be true for households with children. Nearly 1 in 4 of adults living with children said they were behind in rent. 1 in 6 said they didn't have enough to eat in the previous 7 days. New research looked at earlier eviction moratoria by state and found that states that ended or weakened their moratoria resulted in 434,000 excess COVID cases and 10,700 excess deaths compared to states that kept the moratoria in place. Lives are at stake. So we need the emergency first aid, the down payment of a relief package now, and we need your help in calling for it. Let's hope we get it. Then, okay, let's rest up a little and fight for the policies and the funding that will really build back better, as you've heard. We need to make sure unemployment benefits do not run out before the economy recovers. We need to increase nutrition aid so that people in this nation of great wealth do not go hungry. We need to make sure more people have health coverage and access to the COVID vaccine. We need to protect our workers from unsafe working conditions. We need to rebuild education. It appears that stunning numbers of children and youth are dropping out. There was a recent set of tests to 3rd graders, and they found that those tested were doing more or less okay, but 1/4 of the third graders in that area did not take the test. Online education is not working for all children. And if we don't do something, there is a grave danger of serious education loss for children in low-income families, those without adequate internet access, those with disabilities. These will disproportionately be Black, brown, immigrant children. We need more jobs with decent pay. And let's start by preventing the collapse of childcare and hiring more and paying more care workers of all kinds. Let's rebuild our infrastructure, including broadband. We are seeing the stresses on families when family supports collapse, when parents have to be teachers and childcare providers and workers and all their other roles day after day. So we know how badly we need these supports, plus paid leave to help hold it together. We need to protect public health, yes, from COVID, but also build the capacity to respond to new health threats and old ones like lead poisoning and unsafe water and polluted air. We need justice for immigrants and to prevent people from becoming trapped in the criminal justice system, and economic justice to prevent people from falling into the debt trap. Well, we need to do a lot. The Trump administration has thrust us backward and continues to push us further back in its waning destructive days. And it's going to be a tough fight because however much power Mitch McConnell has, he will use to obstruct. He and others will start the drumbeat about how bad the deficit is and how we simply can't spend more. But at the same time, they will throw roadblocks up against efforts to ask the billionaires and wealthy corporations to pay more of their share or to cut the waste out of the Pentagon. We have to support every impulse of the Biden administration to actually build back better, and we have to push them farther. We have to show members of Congress there is strong, reliable support for the policies and funding that moves us ahead. That means identifying people around the country who can speak to the press, who can contact their elected officials, who can be out in the streets and on social media to keep the narrative real. That means willing to make progress, even if it isn't 100% of what we want in its first steps. The right wing has been pretty effective in training its sights on systematically undermining those it sees as threats: labor, Planned Parenthood, Black and brown voters, immigrants, and increasing its source of power like judges. They take steps towards greater power. In another example of a step they understood to be a first step, they worked to screw up the census, hoping to shift representation more to red states and diminish funding to blue states. We need to think more about the steps we need to take to move towards our goals. I belong in a coalition because I know that I alone do not have all the answers. And looking at the folks at this conference, I know you have a lot of the answers, and people like me have to listen to you. Together we can come up with a strategy and act on it. Please join our list at www.chn.org so you can get information you need. We've got a lot of work to do as soon as today to make sure people vote in Georgia and to press Congress to get the emergency first aid we need and to build for the future in the weeks and months ahead. And I look forward to doing that building with you. Thanks.